Okay, Guilty Gear power scaling tier list because the BlazBlue video was taking forever. These are the tiers, as you can see, they're pretty self-explanatory. We have godlike, approaching godlike, superhuman, and fucking sucks, which really I only made just so I can put Daryl down here. Soul bad guy. Very solidly in godlike tier. Immortality, insane strength, wields the most ridiculous weapon ever, but then Asuka decided to remove his flame of corruption. Yeah, Soul was actually heavily nerfed at the end of Strife story mode, but the extent of this is not very clear. Daisuke has stated in a Famitsu article that Soul did indeed lose a lot of power, but still retained some of his gear cells and fighting abilities. Now, I don't know what that means exactly, but I'm gonna place him in godlike as if he never lost any of his powers, and we're gonna move on in life. Kiske, I don't give a shit. They change the pronunciation every game. But what is certain is that this guy's a fucking beast. Kai often goes toe-to-toe with his greatest rival, Soul Bad Guy, as well as his father-in-law, who is also Soul Bad Guy. However, even with the Thunder Seal and the ability to Dragon install, Soul is still the clear victor in comparison. But the gap between these two is incredibly tight, and keep in mind, Kai is just some random fucking guy. And while we're here, we might as well talk about Justice. Now, Justice is easily in godlike tier as well, but the amount of times she's won in a battle against Soul is about equivalent to the number of times that Anji mains have ever been happy. So, like, once. The real question is whether or not Justice is any stronger than Kai, and the answer is definitely, maybe, probably not. Kai already came pretty close to defeating her during the Crusades, and he's only ever gotten stronger since then, so he could probably do it. Let's take a break from godlike tier for a second to talk about, I don't know, Mei? Well, first of all, Mei has got some of the craziest fucking gains I've ever seen. Never mind the fact that she's lugging a massive anchor 24/7, she has more pull strength than the entire fucking Mei ship. Unfortunately, her strength doesn't seem to translate well into combat, but I still think it guarantees her a spot in superhuman tier. Her adopted father, though? Approaching godlike for sure, though it is possible that he's stronger than that. Johnny is touted as being one of the strongest regular humans in the Guilty Gear cast, only being outclassed in this regard by people like Kai and President Gabriel, a man so cool I'm placing him above Soul Bad Guy. But Johnny has never showcased his full strength, and as such, there's a good chance that Johnny is a hell of a lot stronger, we just don't know. There is one other human that is almost certainly stronger than Johnny, and that's of course Kliff Undersn. This man has won so many battles during the Crusades, humanity probably didn't even need an army. Though Kliff never managed to defeat Justice in battle, he never completely lost either. Even in the midst of their final battle in the first game, Justice wasn't even the one who killed him. He just died from old age. Order Soul is in a similar boat here. Soul Bad Guy was not able to take down Justice until after he left the Holy Order, leaving Order Soul as being a weaker and less refined version of Present Soul. As such, we'll go ahead and rank him right below Justice for now. Because some idiot forgot to mention Testament in the last video, let's talk about Testament. Testament was converted into a gear during the Crusades and ended up battling their adopted father, Kliff, and then subsequently got completely bodied. They survived though, and after the fiasco with the Holy Order selection tournament, they became the protector of Dizzy's Forest until, you know. The point here is that while yes, being a gear automatically makes Testament more powerful than almost all human characters, they still lose to all of the characters in godlike tier. As such, I think placing Testament above Johnny makes the most sense. I briefly mentioned Dizzy a few seconds ago, so let's get her out of the way too. Obviously, being the daughter of Justice will easily place her in godlike tier, but god damn it, she's just too fucking nice! We will almost certainly never see Dizzy at her strongest because she never wants to use her powers for violence. At the very least, we know that Dizzy is basically just Justice, but a little bit weaker, so we can make an educated guess that if Kliff can almost defeat Justice, he would most likely be capable of defeating Dizzy in a battle. You wanna know who isn't capable of defeating Dizzy? Jam, but they still gave her the money for it. Now, to her credit, she is a master of a type of magic called Ki, which allows her to amplify the power and speed of her hand-to-hand combat. However, that's pretty much all she has going for her. She can definitely knock your ass to Grandma's house, but on power scales like this one, that's actually pretty average. We'll go ahead and put her in superhuman. We also see prominent usage of Ki in the likes of Kum Haehyun, though we don't see a whole lot of those powers displayed in actual canon. In the story modes, Kum is more of a healer than a fighter, but if we can draw anything from her instant kill, she apparently has the power to weaken someone to the point where they physically collapse if you so much as breathe in their general direction. I can't place her too high since we haven't seen her fight in the story yet, but I think placing her just above Jam is a good enough compromise. Speaking of Ki wielders, let's talk about A.B.A. Again, not much data to work with here, but we know she's got a little bit of magic, she's got some durability, and she's got the giant key. So where does that put her? You know what? I'm in a Guilty Gear Isuka kind of mood right now, so let's go ahead and rank everyone's favorite character, Leopaldon. Now, this would be a lot easier if I actually owned Guilty Gear Isuka, but unfortunately, we do not have that luxury, so we're gonna have to go off of the fandom wiki instead. Hey look, this sentence here says that Leopaldon is, quote, thought to be a Megadeth class gear. Let's see, there's no source on this, no in-game dialogue that even alludes to this. Very possible that this was just made up by the person who wrote this page. fuck it, good enough for me. Moving on, we have Chipp Zanuff, who has spent his entire life up to this point honing his skills as a ninja. Excluding his childhood years, at which point his occupation was heroin addict. But Chipp has all of the characteristics of a badass ninja, including super speed, invisibility, teleportation, huge penis, shadow clones, etc. The only problem with Chipp is that he is very reckless and has poor decision making, which is kind of concerning seeing that he's the leader of a nation, but nonetheless puts him near the top of superhuman. And I'm gonna go ahead and throw Giovanna right below Chipp here, since she has the same super speed as he does, but none of the other ninja stuff. Now, I will admit, her fight with Nagoriyuki was pretty impressive, considering he sits in godlike tier, but Giovanna's gonna need a little more screen time for me to justify moving her up. For Nago, though, he's in godlike for essentially being a hard counter to Soul Badguy, and his placement mostly comes from his evaluations of Soul, saying that Soul's fighting style is reckless, but would eventually overpower him. Because Nago acknowledges Soul's recklessness, I think it's fair to say that he could probably take down the even more reckless and unrefined Order Soul, though he's probably not beating Justice. Answer. We have so little information on this guy's canonical strength, it is insulting. Actually, you know what, yeah, in fact, let me just go ahead and show you the kind of battle data we have to work with here. That's it! Okay, well, connecting the pieces together, we know from GG World that Answer loses to Chipp spectacularly, we know from his arcade story that he can run really fast, and we know from the Xrd story mode that he can throw ninja stars. I'm putting him in me when I'm in a largest boobs competition and my opponent is Anji. I get the impression that a lot of people think Anji is weak for some reason, but that really couldn't be further from the truth. The two fans that Anji holds are called the Zessen, and they are one of 8 immensely powerful magic amplifiers called Sacred Treasures. The 8 Sacred Treasures are some of the most powerful weapons in the entire franchise, with a few of them being wielded by some of the most powerful characters in the series, namely Soul with both the Fire Seal and the Flashing Fang, as well as Kai with the Thunder Seal. So, with the Zessen, along with his solid magical capabilities, Anji should be able to contend with some pretty powerful foes. I mean, he'd still lose, but he'd put up a good fight. In my opinion, I think he's approaching godlike. That being said, though, yeah, that was pretty embarrassing. Alright, now we talk about Baiken. Interestingly enough, Baiken doesn't rely so much on magic. She's just got a really strong sword and a fucking Mario Kart item roulette of hidden weapons shoved up her sleeve. This is kind of a hard one to rank because we know that Baiken is a very strong character, but it's not very clear how strong she is exactly. She only ever hard focused on one enemy in the form of that man, which consequently means she doesn't have a whole lot of wins to her name, and the wins that she does have are either non-canonical or the opponent was definitely holding back. We're pretty much ranking her off of vibes alone here, and if you were to ask me where I would put her, I'd say right above Chipp. I'm gonna make a quick aside here since I know people are gonna comment about this. Japanese characters. I've ranked a few of them already, and if you've hovered around any circle of the Guilty Gear community, you may have heard some folks say, Japanese people in Guilty Gear are canonically overpowered. Here's the thing about that. I don't think that's an entirely accurate statement. In fact, I've actually kind of been losing my mind over this, because throughout the series, especially in Accent Core, they do say shit like, damn, the Japanese carry so much hidden strength. But then when you try to look into why that is and what powers they have specifically, the best answer you get is Japanese descent allows them to tap into their ki magic more easily. Which is fine, but my problem is that none of the characters in the canonical Guilty Gear story have ever demonstrated what the hell this power even looks like. None of the Japanese characters have ever been confirmed to even use ki, and even if they were, it wouldn't even matter because they have never used this ability in any way that would imply that they are overpowered. And on top of that, all of the characters who are confirmed to wield ki magic, including ones who are considered masters, aren't even Japanese. And as I've already said with Baiken, who, keep in mind, I have ranked above most of the characters I mentioned in this segment, she barely even uses magic at all. So if the increased prowess of the Japanese lineage is supposed to be directly linked to their ability to use magic, then why the fuck did Crow say this to Baiken and Guilty Gear Accent Core? This shit doesn't make any sense. Honestly, the numerous misconceptions about ki and Japanese characters in Guilty Gear could probably make for an interesting video in its own right, but what I'm basically trying to say here is that if you're wondering why I haven't ranked the Japanese characters any higher for just being Japanese, it's because the ability that's supposed to make them more powerful is vaguely defined and hasn't been demonstrated in canon, which makes its strength or even potential strength hard to judge, and the strength that we have been able to observe from these characters have nothing to do with them being Japanese. There's obviously more discussion to be had with this subject, but if I see anybody talking shit in the comments on how the Japanese character should be in godlike tier, then I'm gonna consider violating the Geneva Conventions again. Anyways, rant over. let's go to our happy place. It's such a shame that Potemkin does not get as much screen time as he realistically should, because he honestly really deserves to showcase his crazy ass strength. Potemkin was born with a genetic mutation that caused his upper body to strengthen continuously, which, if left unchecked, would have placed Potemkin well into godlike tier. The thing is, the writers over at Arc System Works are too afraid of what they created, so they gave Potemkin a limiter collar to prevent him from getting too powerful. Despite this, his physical prowess is still absolutely absurd, and he's also under the competent tutelage of President Gabriel, so without a doubt, Potemkin sits very comfortably in the approaching godlike tier. Let's have a look at the Assassin's Guild, shall we? Zato and Millia seem to be pretty much equivalent in strength, and it's tough to say which of them is stronger because their powers are like comparing apples to oranges. Millia has more wins against Zato in the earlier games, but Zato supposedly got buffed in Xrd after he was resurrected. My opinion on this will definitely change tomorrow, but between these two, I'll give the higher rank to Millia, and I'll place both of them between Giovanna and Kum Haehyun. For Slayer, I don't need to explain anything, we all know where he goes, but as for Venom, he's sort of implied to be the weakest of the other assassins, however, not by much. It's specifically stated in Accent Core that he sucks at hand-to-hand combat, which means he almost definitely loses to Jam, so that's where I'll put him. Now, you may be thinking to yourself right now, Steven, you're a fucking moron. This is the worst tier list I've ever seen. The other thing you might be thinking is, Steven, wasn't Venom the guy who killed Bedman, one of the most powerful characters ever? Very true. But that was a team effort between Venom and Robo-Ky, and if either of them faced Bedman by themselves, they would have been completely smoked. Bedman has very unique and powerful abilities that are rarely seen anywhere else, namely his mind-reading powers, his dream manipulation, and of course, his bed frame. Despite his expansive power, we actually have a pretty good idea where his limits are, and that's because in his Xrd Arcade story, he straight up tells Soul, yeah, I don't know if I can beat you, dude. I'm gonna guesstimate that if Bedman can't beat Soul, he probably can't defeat Ky or Justice either, so that should put him right around here. Oh yeah, and Robo-Ky fucking sucks, by the way. On the subject of Bedman, we also have to discuss his younger sister, Delilah. This one's kinda tricky to rank because on one hand, she has similar powers to Bedman, and she almost leveled a major city, but on the other hand, she doesn't have control over her powers. Like, I feel like if you threw her into the ring with most of the other characters, she would just cower in fear the whole time and then maybe win by accident. She has hella powers, but she can't use them effectively, and for that reason, she goes an eh. Okay, so this is gonna look really stupid, but we have to rank the bed. And it's about to look even stupider because I'm putting the bed in approaching godlike. The reason is because the bed, by itself, was able to fend off Baiken, Ramlethal, and Sin Kiske all at the same time. Granted, Sin definitely wasn't going all out here. Being a mixture of both Soul and Ky, he is no doubt much stronger than the bed, but I think this battle, as well as some of Sin's previous results, showed that he has a little more growing to do before breaking into godlike tier. Make no mistake though, he's on his way there. Now, Ramlethal, she got her ass whooped. Unfortunately, Ramlethal suffers from the I'm known to be a very powerful character, but I mostly just stand there syndrome, but don't worry, because there's a very easy solution here. Just put her right below the bed. And why not, we'll throw Elphelt right below her here. She's more or less in the same boat. Continuing with our Valentine theme here, we have Jacko, who also just stands there. Damn it. Being a Valentine automatically makes her quite powerful, and she has the scales of Juno, which I had to make a correction for in a previous video, and I'm still upset about it. But the only real clue to her strength is in her instant kill, and it's a little ridiculous. But because she doesn't do anything in the story, and also because, come on guys, I can't keep putting everyone into godlike tier, I'm gonna go ahead and cap her off at approaching godlike, and have the comments go to war about it. And of course, we have Valentine, the OG from Guilty Gear 2. Her human form is nothing that special, but when she gets frustrated, she turns into a Justice clone, and when she gets really pissed, she turns into this thing. Look at this fucking boss fight, though. Holy shit! Honestly, she's stronger than Justice. Easiest tier list of my fucking life. Now this seems like as good an opportunity as any to talk about our other Guilty Gear 2 boys, like Izuna. Now he says he isn't much of a fighter, but don't let his carefree attitude fool you. He's actually lying. Homie has got pretty impressive swordsmanship skills and deep magical knowledge that allows him to break through powerful barriers and perform some of the best teleportation in the series. Now, whether he can use these abilities effectively enough to win fights, gonna be honest, kinda shooting in the dark here with this one, but he was considered to be enough of a threat for the Universal Will to be like, nope, not dealing with that guy. So that's gotta at least count for like approaching godlike or something, right guys? As to where he goes in this tier, you know what? I've got an idea. Perfect. Moving on to Dr. Paradigm, he's more of a strategist than anything, but he does have a few combat abilities, like shooting green orbs and bubble shield. and explosives. Look, dude can probably perform some powerful magic spells, but from what we've seen of him thus far, he's not killing anyone. Raven was also in this game. Yup, that'll be my segue. Raven is practically incomparable to most of the cast, given that he literally cannot die, so we can very confidently place him in the upper echelon of godlike tier. We start running into issues when he goes up against Slayer though, because that guy is also immortal. I'm pretty sure a death battle between these two would go on forever, but if I had to bet on somebody, it'd probably be Slayer, to be honest. Next up, we have Asuka R. Kreutz, the main antagonist of the series until he suddenly wasn't anymore. His placement on the tier list really hinges on whether or not he could defeat Soul Badguy, and for the most part, Asuka's defensive spells always kept him safe from Soul's destruction. In fact, after Asuka challenges Soul to a final confrontation at the end of Exerd Revelator, Soul actually gets really nervous about losing, so much so that he ends up asking Kai for battle advice, and that doesn't really go so well. But the important part here is that Kai tells Soul about a certain technique, a certain ability that could give him an advantage, something that only Soul can do and something that will only ever work once. It's absolutely crazy, but in the off chance that he can pull it off, it could very well give Soul that extra push he needs to overpower and outrank Asuka. And the thing is, you already know what it is. We've seen this happen throughout the franchise time and time again. In fact, we've even seen it a few times throughout this very video. I am so confident that you've caught on with Guilty Gear's bullshit that I want you to tell me what's about to happen next. I want you to take everything you've learned about Guilty Gear up to this point and shove it in the goddamn garbage, because this right here, this is the culmination of all the characterization and world building we've been following. This is the crescendo of the storybook journey that Soul Badguy and that man have been writing since the very beginning. This is the end of the road that Daisuke Ishiwatari has been paving for the past 25 years! And now we are finally ready to put an end to the legacy, the legendary feud between this buff asshole and this fucking little bitch boy Twink. To see the answer to this never-ending quarrel finally be revealed for the first time ever, we are witnessing the grand turning point of the Guilty Gear franchise in real time. So I reiterate, let me hear you loud and clear. How on God's green earth is Soul Badguy going to defeat that man, the gear maker, the devil himself, Asuka R. Kreutz? That's right, we will never know, because the game doesn't tell us and this fight never happens. Woo! I fucking love Guilty Gear! Okay, so we're getting pretty close to the end here, but we still have some filler characters that I don't have much to say about, so I think it's about time for a lightning round! Bridget, she's a skilled bounty hunter, but her weapon of choice is children's toys, so I'm putting her in eh. Zappa, he's got hella summons, but he's currently sitting on his ass in Finland. Also eh. The Universal Will, she's in godlike, but if Bedman lived for a few more seconds, she would have been toast. Leo Whitefang, a rival of Kai Kiske and an absolute war hero during the Crusades. The only time we've ever seen him lose was to Elphelt, so I'll go ahead and put him there. Gold Lewis Dickinson. Apparently he has the strength of the entire White House security force, which is proven when he straight up grabs an RPG rocket out of the air. His placement is going to be a tad arbitrary here, but he'll go in superhuman right below Geo. President Vernon. He's a cyborg who shoots lasers, which technically makes him stronger than Robo-Ky. Honestly, he should be in fucking sucks, but for me, bottom of eh, cause it's funny. And last but not least, Fanny. What, you don't know about Fanny, the nurse girl from the niche Japanese exclusive WonderSwan games Guilty Gear Petite 1 and 2? I wish I could tell you that she's some kind of hidden boss of the Guilty Gear franchise, but no, she's just kind of there, whacking shit with her giant syringe. Not gonna lie though, she would be a pretty cool addition to Strive, right guys, right? Am I right? Come on now. Alright, lightning round over. It's serious time. Axl Low, this guy is the shit. Not only does he have pretty sweet combat and magic skills, but he also has the ability to just delete the timeline. That on its own already cements Axl as one of the biggest threats to the Guilty Gear world as we know it, but having access to time-stopping abilities on top of that makes him nearly untouchable. There's a couple characters with very special cases that might be able to survive Axl's time travel shenanigans, namely Slayer and Raven because they are both ancient and immortal, but for the sake of the tier list, I'm gonna put Axl at the very top. Maybe Axl fans will finally forgive me for not putting him in my first lore video. Next we have Ino. Well, there goes my Axl immunity. Ino is basically just Axl, but better, and she has access to godhood. I will say though, her defeat at the end of Guilty Gear Strive would not have been possible if it weren't for the small but very necessary contribution of, get this, President Vernon. That's right, Ino was technically killed in part by the Guilty Gear equivalent of President Barack Obama, which is just such an L. I mean, I'm gonna keep her at the top here, but just know that mentally, she's like down here for me. And to round out the godlike tier, we of course have Happy Chaos. Where do we even start with this guy? First of all, he is the original, the first and most powerful magic wielder, and he has access to alternate timelines, he can mind control people, he can blow up buildings, he can self-regenerate his body, and he's got a gun. Basically, he lives his entire life in Minecraft creative mode. I wouldn't be surprised if he had a way to circumvent Axl and Ino's time travel abilities because he is just that much of a fucking wild card. Considering the powers he's already shown off and the potential that he's got even more bullshit up his sleeve, I think it's pretty safe to say that Happy Chaos is, without a doubt, the most powerful character in the Guilty Gear series. Okay, I think that should be everybody. I mean, I forgot to put Judgment on here, but honestly, who gives a shit about that guy anyways? Before I end this video though, let me just double check and make sure that everyone is here and accounted for. Faust! Holy fucking shit, where do I put Faust? Faust is a big fucking dilemma, because we know that he has some of the most powerful magic in the series, we know that he lives in what's essentially cartoon logic, and we know that he must have some form of combat skill, not just because we see it in gameplay, but also because of that small teensy tiny part of his life where he was a fucking serial killer, and yet, I am consistently finding myself having a hard time using any of that to measure Faust's canonical combat strength. His spatial deformation technique, often heralded as being incredibly powerful and difficult to pull off, is never really used for any combat purposes. His cartoonishness doesn't really help much in that regard either, and his skills from being a serial killer honestly seem pretty outdated at this point. And that doesn't even consider the fact that Faust just completely fucking died at the end of Strive's story, which complicates this matter further than I could ever give a shit about. This kind of leaves us with two different ways to approach this character. The first being that since he hardly ever engages in real combat, we could say that he belongs somewhere in the bottom half of the tier list, but I don't know, that kind of feels like we're underranking him. I think we could do better than that. The second approach is to fully embrace his cartoonish nature and assume that, at his strongest, his abilities have the potential to carry him into one of the godlike tiers. But now we're ranking Faust based on assumptions and not on any real in-game evidence, which in my opinion would make this a tad dishonest. You see my problem here? I can't place Faust in the godlike tier because we don't really know how his abilities work and he has basically zero combat victories, but I also can't place him any lower because then I would just be the biggest down player in the history of fighting game power scaling. The best way that I could describe Faust's canonical power is that it's non-linear. It's so far beyond our relative understanding of how combat works in Guilty Gear that I have decided the only solution to this conundrum is to place him into his own tier. Actual inexplicable enigma, because holy shit, this man is a complete fucking mystery. And with that, our tier list is finally complete. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let's be honest, you probably disagree, but that's okay, because the great thing about me sharing my opinions on the internet is that all of you get to bond over just how wrong it is in the comment section below. And if you are interested in partaking in whatever discourse is ensuing down there, please consider subscribing to the channel, and perhaps leave a like on the video as well. Oh, and by the way, more frequent uploads are coming soon. Okay, later!
Oh, please don't wait for me, darling. Stay out of the cold rain, for you are